Yo people, what's up? This is Malcolm Extreme, the content machine, coming at you with another reaction video. Today is more serious history, the most epic origin stories in history. Before we react, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for more notifications from the content machine, Malcolm Extreme. If you want to check out this video, the link will be in my basement. Let's get started.
Most epic origin stories in history, Ashoka. It's the year 304
Ashoka.
BC, and
Sounds
the
like
Roman
Ahsoka.
Empire is welcoming a new royal child. Lovingly held by his mother, he's given the name Ashoka, and the emperor, a man named Bindusara, stands near and
I kind of wonder if the people who named Ahsoka kind of got it from there, because it's so close. It's like so close. It's just a letter off.
gazes at this newborn. In this son, he sees a future of
nothing promising.
See, the emperor already has another son.
Had his favorite son,
born from another one of his wives, and he's actually his choice to become his heir.
No, I always forget, like, back then, like, polygamy was more common. I know in some areas polygamy is, how you say, legal, but I'm kind of surprised it's not legal everywhere now.
To add to this, Ashoka's mom was a commoner. Whoops! I mean, how did that happen? While Tsushima's...
That's also rare, too.
So, yeah, case closed here. But Ashoka is still a royal son, and he's given a royal upbringing. Time passes, Ashoka grows up, and...
Yo, that's actually pretty uncommon, too. Like, usually there's no, like, the royals, they never marry a commoner, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they always marry royal-blooded people.
And boy,
highborns,
look like he's
as they say in Game of Thrones.
He's short, kind of fat, and is suffering some sort of weird skin condition which grosses his father out.
Acne.
Though he had already made up his mind that Tsushima was his guy, now he's certain. Ashoka is just way too ugly to be emperor. I mean, come on.
That's crazy. I wonder if conditions like acne was common way back in that time. I wonder if cancer was a thing back then. I don't know. I really don't know.
But what Ashoka lacked in looks, he made up for in charisma and intelligence. And like most kids who know they're not the favorite, he grows to have a huge chip on his shoulder. He's schooled in all the things a royal son should learn. And once he's of age, his father begins to send him out to govern parts of his kingdom and to quell rebellions. Ashoka's first assignment was to govern the area of Ujjain, where he proved to be a master of governmental policy. And later,
you gotta be able to know how you say, talk politics in that situation.
he was put in charge of quelling rebellions in Taxila, where he demonstrates a natural ability to command a military. It becomes obvious that Ashoka is talented enough to rule the empire.
Huge, bro.
This doesn't go unnoticed by the emperor's ministers. They try to tell the emperor, but their opinions don't really matter, because Bindusara had already made up his mind.
He's already dead set on his favorite son, which is kind of one of those stories as old as time. Like, the parents favor one sibling over the other and just try to push them forward. It's unfortunate, but in some cases it's true.
In 273 BCE, the emperor falls ill and is quickly on his deathbed. Tsushima is off fighting a rebellion, so he sends for him to return home quickly so he can be crowned emperor. But by this point in time, the ministers have decided they like Ashoka way better. They think Tsushima is a spoiled brat, and they've watched Ashoka kill it, both governing and on the battlefield.
Dang.
So they lie to the emperor and say that Ashoka's sick and can't go, and that maybe he should just make Ashoka the emperor temporarily while he's waiting for Tsushima to return.
Yo, that's an absolute recipe for disaster, because I can only guess what's gonna happen next.
The emperor's like, did I fucking stutter? At this point, legend says Ashoka proclaims, if the throne is rightfully mine, the gods will crown me as the next emperor. And just like that, Bindusara dies instantly and Ashoka is made emperor.
Wow.
Convenient. When Tsushima returns back to the capital, he's led by the ministers
right on cue
and falls into a pit of charcoal and dies an agonizing death.
Dang.
Ashoka then goes off and kills every single one of his other brothers, except one he kind of liked, to ensure...
Oh my god, bro. That's harsh, man. Survival of the fittest, bro. Who would have thought? Maybe... And another thing is, like, since Ashoka was considered, like, the ugly one in the family, the less liked one, maybe, like, the other brothers treated him like crap. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but still, killing family, that's over the top.
Sure, he would have no...
Not in these days, apparently.
So, in 268 BCE, Ashoka is crowned emperor, and he quickly proves all of his father's ministers were completely wrong, and becomes an unhinged tyrant who rules with fear and terror. His atrocities are too many to list, but here are some of his greatest hits. He once gave his ministers the impossible task to cut down every flowering or fruiting tree, and when they failed, he chopped off all their heads himself.
Yo, this guy is unhinged, bro. Absolutely unhinged, man. This guy's equivalent to like I don't know. It's just like, this guy's the school shooter of his time.
Oh my
Jesus
God, we
Christ.
should've totally gone with sushi. This other time, while walking through a park with his
No.
concubines, he sees a beautiful Ashoka tree, which puts him in the mood for some
Unhinged.
afternoon delight. The concubines are so grossed out having to touch his gross skin that as soon as Ashoka fell asleep, they go and chop all the flowers off the
And
tree to make
what-
sure it won't happen again.
Oh,
Which
wow.
I find hilarious. But when Ashoka wakes up and finds out what they did, he has them all burned to death.
Oh my lord,
And
bro. This guy is absolutely unhinged, man. See, this is what happens when you give the power to a freaking madman, bro.
Perhaps as pièce de résistance, he constructed a beautiful palace, which he then fills with the most evil torture devices imaginable.
He
Burning
wanted
pits,
every
fire chambers,
version of the
molten wool
best
for pouring
torture
down
devices.
spiked walls and ceilings for impaling, rotating blades for chopping off body
Oh my
parts,
God.
and iron hooks for hanging were all said to be found within the walls
Dude literally had a playground meant for Satan himself.
of this palace that's given the name Ashoka's Hell. No
Oh
one
my
knows the
God.
palace ever comes
Ever
out
made it out
It
alive.
did evidently have a beautiful garden in front of it, though. Now, at this
Nice.
point, you may be wondering,
Looks can be
why are
deceiving.
we even talking about this psychopath
Absolutely.
anyway? Well, it's because, believe it or not, he's often referred to today as Ashoka the Great, one of the greatest and most beloved rulers in the history of India.
That's
The
interesting.
redemption arc begins in 262 BCE. Ashoka has dreams
I don't know if there ever could be a redemption arc for all those freaking all those places of terror he constructed just for people he didn't like, man.
surpassing his grandfather and father, who had successfully grown the Mauryan Empire to encompass nearly the entire Indian subcontinent, modern-day Afghanistan and Bangladesh.
That's
For his first
interesting.
conquest, he sets his sights on the kingdom of Kalinga, an unconquered area located on the eastern coast of India that his grandfather had once tried to
Unconquered.
take, but failed. The Kalinga were a proudly independent people who had wealth, trading ports, and a well-trained military, and
If the Kalinga people collaborated with his father over time and retained their independence, maybe it would have been better for them
defeating
instead of
them
having
would
to
be
deal
a
with them.
great first step to show he'd surpassed his forefathers. So, Ashoka takes an army of 600,000 infantry, 30,000 cavalry, and 9,000 war
Man, that's absolutely overkill for a small state like that.
elephants and attacks Kalinga with the entire might of the Mauryan Empire. The Kalinga, though heavily outnumbered, refused to surrender and
Wow.
fought bravely to the end in a desperate
Nice.
but ultimately failed attempt to defend their homeland. The war does not last long, but is literal hell on earth, and the death and destruction are at levels unseen until World War II. The Mauryans win the war, but at a heavy cost, and when Ashoka goes to the battlefield to bask in his greatness, he's instead horrified by what he sees.
All the
The
freaking
bodies
dead
of over
people.
100,000 dead Kalinga soldiers litter the ground. Every step he takes is into a pool of festering blood.
Damn.
The stench of rotting flesh is unbearable, and the swarm of flies feasting on the corpses is deafening. He sees women, young and old, searching for their husbands, their fathers, and their children amongst.
I guess it is a redemption arc, man. Yeah, I never heard of a story like this where like the leader goes out to the battlefield and just mortified by all the death he caused. Yeah, he's probably seeing all that. He's like, yeah, man, dude, I caused all this crap.
The rotting
Damn.
bodies. Some are unlucky enough to find their loved ones, and their howling cries burn Ashoka's ears. He was not the first nor the last ruler to be confronted by the harsh realities of war, but in this moment, he's perhaps one of the few rulers in history who was filled with a deep sense of remorse.
Remorse and
Was this
regret.
the greatness he was seeking? Ashoka leaves the battlefield a changed man. He will no longer seek glory through war, and he invests himself wholly in the study of Buddhism. He begins to erect pillars throughout his kingdom with edicts on how he wishes for his people to live.
No, one song says, "Ain't no such thing as halfway crooks."
Peacefully, with respect for one another, no matter their cultural or religious background. For the rest of his reign, he goes on no further conquest. His only goal was peace and the betterment of the lives of everyone living within his empire. He begins to use the empire's treasury to erect shelters for travelers, plant fruit-bearing trees along the main roads to feed the needy, and digs irrigation systems to provide.
This guy becomes like a bit of a philanthropist almost. It's crazy. That's nuts. Becoming a genocidal, homicidal maniac and then becoming a philanthropist. It's still like just doing all that stuff might have just left a stain. Just leave us a stain on your reputation. It has to as a leader, right?
Clean water for everyone. Through his efforts, Maurya grows prosperous and enjoys peace that lasts for decades. He funds Buddhist missions out of India in an attempt to foster world peace, and his efforts spreads the philosophy throughout Asia.
That's interesting.
When India regained its independence from British rule in 1947, Ashoka's chakra was chosen as the central icon.
That's interesting. Now I didn't even know what that symbol meant on the flag. Now I do. That's pretty interesting.
Cyrus the Great. It's 600 BCE, and a king named Astyages is lying awake in bed, troubled by a strange dream. In his vision, he saw an ocean of water flowing from his daughter that swept through not only his kingdom of Media, but flooded all of Asia as well. The next morning, he's still troubled by this dream, and he seeks counsel from his magi, whose interpretation chills him to the bone. The dream was an omen that the offspring of his daughter would one day challenge him for the rule of his empire. To prevent this, he quickly marries her off to a mild-mannered Persian king named Cambyses I.
That's interesting.
Ain't no way any.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know how that's gonna end. I thought he was gonna kill her for a second.
Great conqueror is gonna come from Persia. But just a year after the marriage, Astyages has another dream. This time, his daughter stands before him, and vines suddenly begin to grow from her back.
That's
the vines
crazy.
Grow so large that they entangle all of Asia. Astyages is again freaked out, and again he goes to see his magi, who confirms his worst fears. The son of his daughter will dethrone him and go on to rule an empire that stretches to the four corners of the world.
So it's like the dream is the same throughout all the nights that he's dreaming about this. That's kind of nuts. I've heard it happen before. I'm not gonna lie.
The words of his magi scare the crap out of Astyages, and he decides then and there that he'll do everything he can to ensure this prophecy never comes true. But before he can even
now he's gonna try to kill her.
Becomes pregnant and gives birth to a boy. Astyages orders his most trusted general, a man named Harpagus, to immediately travel to Persia and kill the child. Loyal to his king, the general makes
that's equally worse.
The infant from the hands of its mother and walks away as she begs for him to stop. Harpagus carries the baby out of the city.
Yo, how did he do that? How was he able to do that? Didn't she live with a king? Doesn't the king have guards and stuff? Did he come in the night and take the baby? That's the only way I can.
Newborn, he finds he just doesn't have it in him to take the life of an infant. So instead, he gives the baby to a shepherd and tells him to go leave it in the woods to die. As ordered, the shepherd takes the baby and carries it off into the woods.
But the shepherd doesn't leave
Harpagus, the wife of the shepherd, had just given birth to a stillborn child. As he walks into the wood, he stares into the eyes of the infant, and he can't help but to think of his own child and what could have been.
Wow.
The shepherd decides to disobey Harpagus.
Bro, that's like, I don't know. That's like, this is origin stories. So that's like an anime level origin story almost.
Harpagus and brings the baby home, and he and his wife decide to secretly raise him as their own. They name the boy Agridates, and the shepherd buries their own stillborn son and gives Harpagus the location of the body.
Yo, so some people were something was looking out for that kid for real. So someone was looking out for that kid from above, because like he got like two chances to die there, and like in every situation, like the person felt guilt about killing the child and just gave it away, and then the last person to get the child spares its life by raising it. It's so crazy how compassionate human beings all through this brutal world can be, man.
As far as everyone else knows, the matter's settled. The royal infant is dead. So Agridates is raised in the countryside away from the royal family, completely unaware of his lineage, and he grows into a strong, charismatic boy. One day, at the age of 10, he's playing with some other kids, and in their game, he gets named the king. As king, he orders around the other boys, and they all play along, except this one kid who was the son of a Median noble. When the kid refuses to listen, Agridates orders the other boys to rough him up to teach him a lesson.
I'm actually kind of surprised that like noble kids would go off and play with commoner kids. But you know, when kids don't care who's who at that point in time, you know, kids really don't care. You could have two kids from like completely different backgrounds get together and just have a blast.
For not listening to
the innocence is pure.
The noble boy goes home crying and tells on Agridates, and the boy's dad can't stand the injustice, and he immediately goes to Astyages to complain to get this shepherd boy punished. Agridates and his shepherd father are brought to the throne room in Media, and at first look, Astyages is immediately suspicious. This boy looks exactly like him, and is the same age his dead grandson would be. And on top of all this, he speaks and conducts himself with class far above a commoner.
Wow, that's crazy. No, people could just know like who's their kid, you know, not on the Maury show or the Jerry Springer show, but like some people when they look at the kid, they just know it's theirs.
shepherd and demands the truth. Who is this
It's his
boy?
grandson, but
The
still.
shepherd defends that this is his son until Astyages threatens him with severe punishment if he's lying, at which point he reveals everything. The king is furious.
Oh, no.
Not so much at the shepherd,
He knows
but at
now.
his most trusted general who had failed him. Harpagus is summoned to the throne room, and as he enters, he sees the shepherd and the boy, and immediately
Oh
knows his
man,
fault.
the jig is up, bro. But you know what? I wouldn't even, if I was him, I wouldn't even feel regret about it. I'd be like, you know what? I just couldn't kill the child. Whatever happens to me, happens to me. I just couldn't kill the kid. That's how it would be for me. That's how it would be for me. Honestly, if he really felt some way about it, actually he couldn't refuse it, because like he probably would have been executed right there as the general if he refused an order from his king. Push comes to shove, if I was faced with that situation and I couldn't kill the kid, I would just flat out admit, hey, you know what? I could have killed the kid at that time. If you're gonna execute me for that, then just do it. But the deed is done. He's here right now. Hey.
Harpagus knows there's no use in lying, so he tells the truth. But surprisingly, the king seems to keep his cool. He tells Harpagus that he
That was the best.
bad about, killing his grandson, and he's
That-
actually somewhat relieved.
See? Telling the truth was the best option right there. See? Or maybe it's gonna take a turn for the worst. Who knows?
That he's still alive. Tell you what, let's celebrate his return tonight. Come back later and, could
Oh,
you please send
no.
your 13-year-old son a little earlier so my grandson will have a companion? Harpagus is relieved and goes home and tells his wife. And
I got a
kid
bad
what's
feeling
going
about
on.
this, man.
He
I
sends
really
his
do.
son to the palace early, not thinking anything of it, and starts to get freshened up for the feast.
Damn, I knew it was too
When
good to
his
be
son
true.
arrives at the palace, Astyages orders his soldiers to kill him and chop him into pieces. Some parts of the boy are then roasted, and other parts are boiled.
Yo, bro, that is freaking nuts, man. That is absolutely freaking nuts that someone would do that. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but that's one hell of a punishment, man.
These cooked pieces of human flesh were then placed on silver platters for later in the evening. At the royal feast, Harpagus is seated with other nobles, and mutton is served to everyone. Harpagus's mutton looks a little different, but the king seems to be in a good mood, so they all eat up. Once everyone's stuffed, Astyages asks Harpagus for a little help.
Damn.
He calls for his attendants, who bring in a basket.
Brings him his
and
head,
places it
bro.
directly in front of Harpagus.
He absolutely
He
brought
orders
him his
to lift
head.
the basket. Hesitantly, he follows the king's commands and is
That
horrified to
is
see the head and hand.
Oh, no, someone would have to die at that point. I don't give a damn if you're my king, man. I would be so filled with rage that nobody would see me pull my sword out. That guy is gone. The guy in front of me, my king, is gone.
Hands of his son. Astyages, with an evil grin, then asks Harpagus if he enjoyed his meal. A little gamey, perhaps? Harpagus comes to the sickening realization that he had just eaten his own son for dinner.
Man.
Against all odds.
Dude,
he
like,
maintains
even the people around the table, what are they thinking at this point, man? This has to be like the craziest shit they've ever seen in their lives. Like at the time, if it's my king did that and I was a noble at the table and I saw this shit, I'd be like, oh no. Absolutely no.
his composure and simply states,
Damn.
"Whatever my king does pleases me." He asks to keep the remains of his son, which he calmly takes and buries at home.
There's no way.
He never forgives the king.
There's
and will spend
no
the rest of his
way.
life plotting his revenge.
Plotting his revenge.
Feeling
Absolutely.
pretty proud about the way he dealt with that idiot Harpagus, Astyages now has to
There's
figure out
no
what to
way,
do with this
bro.
grandchild he had feared. I mean, he could just kill him and get it over with, but instead he seeks the counsel of his magi again, who tells him that technically the prophecy had come true. The boy had become a king in the game he was playing, so now he doesn't pose any threat. Relieved, Astyages apologizes to the boy and sends
Yo, that magi or whatever is low key playing 4D chess right now, I think.
him to be raised in Persia by his biological parents, who are both confused but also happy that their son they thought was dead for 10 years is somehow still alive. They rename him Cyrus II after his Persian grandfather.
That's
Well, in
crazy.
Persia, Cyrus
Can you imagine? Can you imagine being raised on a farm only to find out you're king and you get to meet your real parents? It'd be kind of awkward, but then like you're like, wow, man, this is crazy. It's like being a secret millionaire or some shit.
grows to be a strong and capable leader, and when Cambyses passes away, he assumes
Getting
the
an
throne and
inheritance
begins setting his
almost.
sights on larger conquests. He soon realizes that the greatness he desires will be impossible if he's still under the thumb of his grandfather, and he begins plotting ways to regain Persia's independence. Back in Media, Harpagus gets wind that Cyrus may have higher ambitions, and he sends him a secret message. In his letter, he reminds Cyrus of how his grandfather wanted him killed.
I wonder
if Persia were to lead a
I wonder if he actually hit the letter in a rabbit. I wonder if that's just a plot to make it kind of funny here, but I wonder if that's actually what happened.
Rebellion against Media, he would turn his forces against Astyages and fight alongside him. This sounds like a pretty good deal, but Cyrus has one last problem. Persia is less of a kingdom and more of a scattering of tribes that kind of tolerate a ruler.
I'm kind of confused. Was Persia like one of the largest empires in the world at some point, or did it lose its empire at this time? What time period was this? I forgot what time period this was exactly, but I could have sworn Persia was like one of the largest empires. I'm not
If
sure.
he wants to have any success against his grandfather, he first needs to unite these tribes to fight as a unified army. As the new ruler of Persia, he orders men from across his lands to a forest and orders them to clear it within a day. Not knowing what kind of ruler Cyrus is going to be, the men begrudgingly do so, and by the end of the day are completely exhausted.
Nice. I wonder, does he give the land to them? That'd be so cool if he did.
Cyrus again calls them back to the same spot. The aching men head back to the forest, thinking this Cyrus guy might need to be taken care of quickly if he keeps this up. But when they arrive, they're shocked to find Cyrus with an incredible feast laid out in the
Nice.
He invites them to eat, and instead of working, the men spend the whole day relaxing.
They say the quickest way to a person's heart is through their stomach, man. He won them over through food.
Drinking and eating the most delicious food they've ever tasted.
That's great.
As the sun begins to set, Cyrus stands before them and says, "Persians, you have the power to shape your own future. If you follow me, you will enjoy days like today and even better ones without having to endure hard labor. But if you go against my plans, you will face hardships worse than what you experienced yesterday. I speak to you as a voice of freedom.
Wow, man.
It seems that Providence has chosen me."
Yo, he put him through hard work, gave him a reward, and told them there was like a brighter future ahead. Yo, this guy is playing them. This guy is playing them like based on psychology, but like giving them inspiration almost, you know?
To bring prosperity to you. You are just as capable and brave as the Medes. Knowing this, refuse to continue obeying Astyages. The men erupt into cheers. Finally,
yeah!
to save them from the tyranny of the Median Empire.
Yes!
With full support of all the clans in Persia, Cyrus quickly raises an army and leads an all-out assault against his grandfather's forces. Astyages orders Harpagus to command his army to defend his lands and stop this revolt.
No.
But when the two armies meet on the battlefield, Harpagus does as he'd promised, turns his men and begins attacking the remaining Median soldiers.
Wow,
His revenge
bro.
against Astyages has begun.
Dude, that has to go into the greatest revenge stories of all time. The last one I watched was like the greatest revenge stories. But like this has to be like one of the greatest revenge stories of all. No, it was the most epic battles. But this has to go into the greatest revenge stories. Absolutely.
Cyrus, with the help of Harpagus, goes on to dethrone his grandfather and establishes what will be known as the Achaemenid Empire. Exactly
Nice.
as Astyages saw in his dreams, this new empire quickly grows, and at its peak, stretches from the Mediterranean to the Indus River.
That's
the
absolutely
largest empire the world
huge.
had ever seen to this point. And unlike his grandfather, Cyrus rules with fairness and equality. He's loved by everyone in his land throughout his reign and long after he dies. So much so that he even snags an honorable mention in the Bible for being a cool guy.
Goated! Goated for real. That's great. That's absolutely great. You're in the Bible, your name will live on. Another good video from Serious History. Let me know if you watch Serious History's channel. Let me know if there's any videos from Serious History that you want me to react to. Again, the link to the video will be in my basement. Comment, like, subscribe, hit the bell for more notifications from the content machine. Malcolm Extreme. Take it easy.